Hi, everybody, and good. We're here once again with a hurricane Q&A. I'm Bryan Norcross with Fox Weather, and of course, in Fox Weather headquarters in New York, is Ian Oliver is joining us today, and Jordan Overton is there at the controls. Sorry, we're a little bit late here, as you may have seen from my post earlier. Hi, Ian. Good
Hello.
afternoon. From my post earlier, we're in experimental mode here. Our goal of these Q&As here these last few weeks has been to add a little bit of technology each week, and this week we've done a couple things. One is we've what's the right verb here? We turned on Ian's camera there. We lit it up.
Yeah, we got
There.
two microphones going too, and you get funky things that happen. So we're working
Right,
through it.
exactly. And we're working through some audio problems. That's what was delaying us here. But we're also streaming where we have never strummed before, so to speak, or strung, I guess. Is that the best sense of stream? Strum. Anyway, we've never streamed before to X and to LinkedIn and other places. So anyway, anybody that is watching us, we really would just appreciate you saying, "Hey, we're here on Facebook or on YouTube or on X or on LinkedIn or on Instagram." Because we've got multiple accounts going, and this is new. In fact, this is the first time this has been done, as far as I know.
Brian, I didn't even know that you could stream live on LinkedIn. So we're learning things.
Yeah, we are. We're totally learning things. So anyway, I'm checking my X account, and I'm not seeing us, but I'm not sure how it's supposed to show up. So anyway, counting on the audience here to let us know where they're seeing us, what they're seeing, and
You
so
are
forth.
up on X.
We are up on
I'm
that.
one of your followers, and I just
Oh,
pulled
yeah.
it up. So there,
Oh,
boom.
maybe I'm not. I don't follow myself. Maybe that's what the issue is.
There we go.
There we
Check.
are. Okay. So we're literally on 10 platforms streaming live right now. So it's a new and different thing. And I'll tell you where this came from. I know this, Ian, this was before your time on local TV, but maybe you did this kind of thing of taking audience questions during a storm threat.
Yeah.
Back in my day, we put a phone number up on the screen. This is before you even needed to dial the area code. So we're talking about back when the phones had cranks on them. Anyway, we just put up the 7 digits, and people knew to call that number, and then we just answer the questions on the air. This was with no delay. This was crazy time. So. Anyway, but what is the equivalent of that? I mean, that was very effective. Did you do that when you were in local TV in Tampa?
Yeah, it's funny. When I was in Vermont, that was when we first made our first Facebook page, and it was that was back when you needed the .edu and all that. So
Right,
to see
yeah.
how it's changed. But yeah, we did a lot of Facebook questions, the original Facebook Lives and whatnot. But we find ourselves in a spot this week, Brian. It's the same thing that you and I talk about on the Fox Weather stream and on Fox Weather Now. We will coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern today. Whole different situation this week as compared to even where we were this time last week.
Yeah. The Atlantic is lighting up, so to speak. Especially, I think, in the long term. We look at the models today, and the models show a week from now and 2 weeks from now. Now we have 15 days. I mean, everybody can look at 15 days with no problem. And of course, the 15-day points move all over the place. Every 6 or 12 hours, the 15-day points in a different place. Well, the problem with that is we tend to think of what the model looks like 10 or 15 days from now as what it is now. And what's happening is the Atlantic is becoming more conducive to development if we're right about the cause and effect of this. So it's not as much right now as it is a week from now. And we're going into this phase, both of the, getting closer to the peak of the hurricane season, is looking at averages, and also just based on what we know about the MJO moving over Africa toward the Indian Ocean, and it's the tailing part after the MJO that we get the conducive conditions.
Jordan, it sounds like you you got to throttle me down just a touch here. Got me yelling at folks on LinkedIn, Bryan.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, anyway, let's take a look at a couple things, and then we'll get to your questions, and then we'll get to okay, where is everybody watching and what platform? So, all right, we have a question here. Go ahead, Ian.
This question, first one. Hey guys, I'm watching from Spearfish, South Dakota. That was from the X platform. Hey, it's been real busy in South Dakota. It will be once again. That's something we'll be tracking on Fox Weather Now this afternoon. Bryan also wanted to point out, you did have a comment here from someone saying, I was an Andrew listener from back when you were talking about the telephone. So it only takes, you had mentioned how we're just transitioning into a new phase and the overall basin's becoming more favorable. But even before things exist, they exist out and we get weirdo, bizarro model land. And we've seen some bonkers runs, and social media has just turned into a circus at the flip of a switch. So the whole point of what you were describing of us being in all these places, you've been a voice of reason for decades. So being in more places to be a reliable, reasonable source of tropical information, more important than ever.
Yeah, I know that's what we're trying to do. And if you read my posts, I repeat over and over and over again that systems that are disorganized, just organizing, haven't even thought about organizing yet, but show up in the models, the forecast for those are always going to have huge errors and much bigger errors than any kind of normal errors. And they're subject to change, and they're going to change, and they're going to change frequently. And unfortunately, now that everybody has a voice, and we're giving them a voice right here to ask questions, but everybody has a voice online, obviously. And unfortunately, what comes out of that is people actually think that the forecasts are much worse than they really are, because they're saying, "Oh, look at that thing! We thought that was going to hit Miami, and now it says it's going to hit Jacksonville, or it's going to go into the Gulf, or something like that 10 days from now, or 12 or 15 days from now." So a forecast can actually be very good and not distinguish 10 or 15 days out from the Gulf or from Charleston, South Carolina, just because of the angles. The slightest little bit of difference in angle makes a huge difference in where it affects the coast if it's coming from the other side of the ocean. So I think from a meteorological imaging standpoint, and in the impressions that all of this gives, I think that's a real challenge for
it's
all
hard too, because it delegitimizes the messaging that you're always talking about. There's no defined you said there was going to be 2 major hurricanes in 15 days and then it doesn't happen. Well, who's you? You have to find that credible source as we're in a whole new world here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't every day look at the comments and respond to my Facebook comments and YouTube comments, but I do try and occasionally sit down and actually look at them, and if there are some key ones, I try and respond to them. But it is amazing how many people come away from reading what I write and reading what they see on social media. I'm sure on Facebook, maybe on other platforms as well, and they come away with the impression that forecasts are still terrible, just like they always were, when in actual fact they're a lot better than they were. Oh wow! Look at this from you on YouTube. Perry Lim is watching from Singapore,
and we had one from Barbados too. So
yes, it is a different world, isn't it, Jordan? If you can punch up the graphics, NOAA came out with an update to their forecast today, which I think is a little bit interesting. They the impression of the forecast is that they lowered the numbers very slightly. So there you see the May NOAA numbers. Remember, they give a range, where CSU gives a number. Deep in their information, they give a range, but they give the numbers. That's what we're used to. And you see the NOAA average of the NOAA numbers really matches up with the CSU numbers. All those, or most of those numbers, are just slightly above average. And here's the new one, just came out today. It's slightly trimmed on the high end, down from the earlier numbers, but the idea is maybe slightly above an average season. So, when you look at the averages, Ian, we're really not far off average. We're still not even to the date when, on average, the first hurricane happens, which would be August 11th. So, things are there's nothing unusual going on here if we are going to have a more or less average or maybe just slightly above average season. What's the date for the, Ian, what's the date for the
First hurricane?
The fourth storm? It's about this time, right?
Yeah, and the first hurricane is August 11th, I believe. So
yes, right. But then the fourth named storm, and we're pretty much on average for all that. So, if we get a hurricane here in the next week or 2 weeks somewhere in the basin, it'll be more or less average. So we'll see. All right. So while we're here, let's just take a look at what's going on out there. Good thing is that this system is going up into the mid-Atlantic, middle of the Atlantic. This system here is also not going to bother land. As a matter of fact, this system here that we thought might continue the onslaught of rain in the Carolinas is actually going to help things. There's where it is right now. Look at there it is. I mean, it isn't much, but it is a little flare up of thunderstorms, and it's trying to get a circulation together. Take a look here. When we look at the model, you can see this kind of effort at a circulation here. Let me see. Let me go over here, and here you can see it's got a decent shot at a circulation. But what that is, that's all part of an elongated area of low pressure. And look at this area of moisture coming here into the southern part of the Florida Peninsula. It is raining hard in surges in South Florida. So that's going to be the case, and that's going to last into the weekend. Now, as we go forward, there we are Saturday. This is well offshore. And look here over the Carolinas, dry air being pulled in behind it. That's not the case in Florida and South Georgia, however. And guess what's coming? That moisture that moved over to South Florida, that's going to push up into the south. And we have another surge of moisture coming for late in the weekend, early next week over the south. So it's the hot, sunny weather is not happening across the south. All right, here's that Invest that's out there, Invest 96L. Estimated 30-mile-an-hour winds. They actually went down on those numbers. Interesting. And the idea is it goes up in here and nothing right away, and then sometime up in there, 60% chance over the next several days. But we have two systems. Here's that one over here. And notice it, according to the model, it hasn't got a circulation with it yet. That's what we're waiting on. And over here is another one. Doesn't have a real circulation, but the models say we should pay attention to that. So watch as we go forward in time with this. And here you see the two systems. There you see the moisture with this. Lots of dry air here, super dry air here, moisture here, and this one has moisture in front of it. So let's watch as we go in motion. This first one takes on up north, kind of fights off the moisture. Thinking is that maybe it can get organized into a tropical depression or tropical storm. That's what they're giving it a 60% chance. This one here ends up in the middle of the just almost to the middle by Monday between the islands here, the Caribbean islands, and Africa, not quite there. And it's fighting some dry air here. So no quick development with that, but downstream indications are that it does push the dry air out and maybe develop. And look, another one comes behind it, and guess what? There's another one behind that. So it really does seem like the season is switching here. When we look at our possible low pressure systems based on all these different models, the two regular old models, GFS and ECMWF, and then the AI models, notice they cluster right in here for next week. So there's a big consensus we'll have some kind of development of something right in there. When we look at the chances of development from the European model, and they say, well, okay, where is the most likely place to have a tropical storm or a hurricane? It's right here in the middle of this line of moisture, and everything is kind of moving that way. So, what's this telling us? It's telling us that next week we're going to have to watch and see what happens here. Indeed, the long range models, some of them take it up here like this, and Bermuda will have to watch, and some of them take it in a more direct line to the west. And nobody knows. We don't know. It's impossible to know what will happen downstream because none of these systems have developed yet. So if you don't have a developed system that has a developed center, your forecasts are always going to be a spray. That's just the way it works, and that's the way some version of that's the way it's always going to work, I think, although hopefully maybe AI models will eventually help us out there. All right, Ian, who's tuned in and what do we have?
Am I good to go? All right, I'm
You're good
back
to
up,
go.
working through some of those audio issues, Brian, and I'm learning to drive the bus with the social side of things too. So I've favorited a few comments. So why don't we get to a couple of these? You had just mentioned, this is right up your alley. You had just mentioned the AI models. What do you think of the DeepMind AI forecast model? I believe you were consulted on this, correct?
Well, yeah. So I talked to the Google folks quite a bit. It's really interesting what they're doing, and I've learned a lot about AI models in general from doing that. What do I think about it? If we look back at historic hurricanes or past hurricanes, not long way back, but past hurricanes where we know what happened, it did very well on some really key storms. Otis being one that we highlight because if you remember Otis that hit Acapulco was horribly forecast by the computer models. The original National Hurricane Center forecast kept it a weak storm and kept it offshore. But we didn't have good data. We didn't have radar data. We didn't have Hurricane Hunter data until the last day, and the forecasts were just poor at best. It was the worst forecast for a significant storm that I can remember in a long, long time. And the Google model did pretty well with that. It would have given an earlier alert to the possibility of a strong storm affecting Acapulco. So that was amazing. Now, this is our first year actually seeing it in action.
Yeah.
We're trying to see how it does with systems that haven't formed yet, and I'm not seeing a lot out of it. It's not picking up on systems that the European model is picking up on. But the problem is that systems also aren't developing. So maybe it was right in the first place. So
Right.
until we see more evidence here and more different kinds of systems, including well-developed systems, we're really not going to have a good feel for it. But based on history, it's a very, very credible model and a good addition to what we can look at to understand what might be happening in the tropics.
Before we leave that, Brian, Otis is a great example. It is the best example of a short fuse setup. But I wanted to ask you with the AI models, the opposite of an Otis, which was an extreme example of rapid intensification. You had mentioned the Euro AI model. That one was making the rounds, to go back to our social media conversation. It runs out to 15 days, 360 hours, and it was pretty adamant of something hitting Florida. So, of course, somebody's going to screen grab and post that. This is a fledgling machine learning model. Do we know anything about how well these are going to do? Are they like traditional models very much in the sense that they get very poor beyond X date?
Well, I mean, so I guess the question is what poor means. But let me say one other thing about all three of the models that we're talking about. And we're talking about the traditional European model and its ensembles. It's called the ENS, is the technical name for the ensembles of the traditional European model. And then we're talking about the European center, same people that run the traditional Euro model, but their AI model that you were just mentioning. And then we're talking about the Google model. They all start with the initial data that's generated by the European Center. They all use that. So they aren't totally independent of each other because they start with that same initial data. What we want to have happen eventually is we want to have the initializations be different across the model. So just starting with that thought. But I think at least this is what how I'm interpreting it right now, and because again we're in our first year with this. But if I think about how what the AI models are looking at, and it's not totally pattern recognition because we know that the AI also kind of does some correlation to come up with a new answer besides what it's seen before. But my sense is that it might signal more or less about where the hurricane is going than the likelihood of a hurricane developing in that time period. So at least that's what I'm hanging my hat on at the moment until proven to be incorrect about that. I'm just thinking that perhaps the model is looking at the weather pattern, looking at the atmosphere, and saying, "Oh, this is the kind that in the past, based on our training, has produced hurricanes." So, um, you know, we're going to produce some hurricanes here, but remembering that where is so flexible because the slight amount of difference on Tuesday makes a huge difference on Saturday, right?
Right. Right. Let's pop this one up. You had mentioned some of the development chances. Right. It's the meme god saying lots of dry air in front of Invest 96L, and that's true. That's part of the reason why we've been talking about the wave behind it that's still going to emerge off the coast of Africa. Perhaps that's going to find a more conducive atmosphere.
Yeah, although some of the down the road, some of the computer forecasts for 96L do indeed develop it. It's a pretty robust piece of moisture, and so we'll see. But yeah, that's what I've been saying, and that's why the Hurricane Center, if you notice on their graphic, they don't like take it off right away. They have a little gap in there on the graphic before it actually starts up, right? So that's what this gap right here is about before it has a chance to get going, because it is fighting off dry air. If you look here, even on this picture, these low clouds here are essentially dried out clouds because of Saharan dust and dry air is sucking the moisture out of the atmosphere. But once it gets up in here, then it might be past that. And if it finds a conducive piece of atmosphere there, has enough moisture with it, then it can push the dust off and out of the way.
All right, I'm pulling back up to our favorites. This one, actually, before we leave the Florida conversation, Britta pointing out South Florida needs the rain, and you can tell us more about that. I was a Gulf Coast guy down in Tampa Bay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the rainy season, it's not all that rainy. If you get stuck into, for the west coast of Florida, if we had an onshore flow, it'd be super muggy, but all the rain would be going over to the Atlantic side. They need some rain there. Sounds like down in South Florida too. That could be some benefit of that upper level low that's drifting that way.
So Southeast Florida, the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, metropolitan area there is dry. There's been surges of rain, but just passing storms. There haven't been any real rainstorms. As a matter of fact, the National Weather Service in Miami, I think it was last week, came out with a mid-rainy season update, talking about how dry it has been in Southeast Florida. And that it's wetter in Southwest Florida, but no place is crazy wet in the southern part of the state this year, but especially the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm metro area, metro strip up I-95 is very dry right now, although getting some decent rounds of rain today.
And Bryan, you had told us how NOAA nudged their numbers down just slightly, CSU holding them right where they were. Is that dry stretch? I mean, that's got to be partially related to the fact that we didn't really have, outside of Chantal, which impacted the Carolinas, these messy throwaway storms early season that can move in and end the dry season down in Florida. We didn't have that this year.
Yeah, remember that CSU lowered the numbers by one in July, right? And then stayed with the lower number in August. So I mean, but also remember that the CSU folks, Dr. Phil Klotzbach and his team that puts those out, also noted this sort of high level of uncertainty because the two big factors they look at, one is the temperature of the water in the Atlantic, and it's plenty warm. It's just not crazy warm, although it is quite warm when you get to the Caribbean and the Gulf, as it always is. And it's also very warm off the southeast coast, and that's why one reason these systems keep developing there. But in the Pacific, the La Nina El Nino thing is, trending toward a La Nina. And if we're going to get a La Nina, it would be later in the hurricane season, and we'd be more likely to have those late September and October storms that we've become so familiar with the last few years, certainly. And so, if everything is steady state, I think they feel like they're in the right ballpark with something near normal or just above normal. But if things do change, that's why they've stayed in that slightly above normal territory, kind of hedging that bet for the idea that the pattern becomes more conducive toward the late months of the hurricane season.
This graphic pulled up for Invest 96L. Janessa is asking, what are the chances that 96L find its way into the Caribbean Sea near the Greater Antilles? It looks
we don't see
more
that
likely than
happening at
not
all,
that's
no.
going north.
Yeah, that one's going north. The next one, I don't know whether I'd put it at 50-50. Based on the models today, 60-40, it goes north. But like I said, this is the one I'm talking about is the one that's over Africa. So looking at this, it's this one here that is going to take a much more southerly track as this one gets up out of the way. And this one is going to leave some moisture behind here, and it moisten the tropical belt. So it's hard to do, but just try not to look at the models too far down the road, and stick with, okay, let's concern ourselves with the next 5 days or so. But even those forecasts are subject to much larger errors than normal. Then once the system develops and the computer forecasts start with something that is cohesive and seeable. Right now, there's nothing really to grab onto except a messy blob. And what we're showing here, I'm showing all these winds. Oh, look at this wind flow like that, and over here and so forth. Yeah, but that's a model's representation of the wind. That's not. We don't know the exact wind out there. We don't have any way to measure the exact wind. Now they have all kinds of sensors and take satellite measurements and so forth. Whatever they can to feed into the model, and then they come up with this representation that I don't have any reason to believe that it's wrong, but we 100% know that it's not exactly right. So that's just that's the best we can do in a situation where we are very, very, very data sparse.
Bryan, we got TikTok questions coming in, and TikTok's outside my purview, both on this monitor and generally speaking. So, Jordan, if you want to pull that up.
Yeah, I'll get us.
Jordan is over there, by the way, trying to work the controls and TikTok.
There you go.
So,
yeah, so TikTok.
Okay, TikTok.
TikTok question. Now, there we go. All right, so a question coming in from TikTok. They're wondering if 96L is going to impact Bermuda. A lot of questions about Bermuda and 96L.
Well, so I wouldn't put 0% on that, but I don't think I'd put more than 10 or 20% on that. And there's no sign of it being a strong storm. Now, the next storm, you'd have to put a little higher odds that Bermuda could, but Bermuda is a speck in a very large sea. Now, it is uncanny how often Bermuda has gotten hit lately. Seems like it's been a kind of a regular thing, and it seems like the odds of being that little tiny. I mean, sometimes it's hard to find on the map. It's such a little island compared to the vastness of the ocean. But anyway, the next one, if the next one, next one's going to come to a fork in the road as they usually do, and whether it gets caught in the flow that's turning north and comes up that way, that's an open question. But that would be a question for the end, like not this weekend, but next weekendish time frame. So maybe even into the following week. So anyway, in Bermuda, obviously it's hurricane season. You continue to watch, but 96L looks like a very, very low odds impact. And even if it were to come that way, it would likely not be very significant.
Yeah. We were just talking about, I'm looking at some of these questions coming in. We'll get to these in just a second. Went to Bermuda. You always talk about this on Fox Weather. If there is a hurricane hardy place on this planet, man, it's Bermuda. That place is a literal fortress, but it is odd the last several seasons how often they've been impacted.
Yeah, no, and with eye walls, I mean, it's the craziest thing that relatively small island just keeps getting run over by a hurricane eye wall.
We get a geography question now. Trev Lee's asking about, I'm thinking geographical effects here. What do you feel about Cape Canaveral effects on the movement of a hurricane? We have talked about that at times, how the contour of the shoreline can sometimes help twist up. We talk about that at the Bay of Campeche, things like that. It says Hurricane Matthew wobbled away right as it approached the Cape back in 2016. Brian, I was on Palm Beach shores and New Smyrna Beach reporting in the field on Matthew, and I got rocked. And I know that there was significant damage on Merritt Island. So I would say for this one, yes and no. More so, no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a thing that happens when hurricanes encounter coastlines. But if there was any place that would not be effective, it would be Cape Canaveral, because it's a bit of land. And so the reason that there's an effect is because the speed of the air coming over the water hits the land and slows down, and that can actually divert the wind to the left. It just depends on the situation, but because of the way things spin, generally to the left, which can actually tighten up the circulation, or sometimes it disrupts the circulation to some degree, and the center reforms or whatever. But I'm not, you'd have to do the modeling with Cape Canaveral to see, but my instinct says that Cape Canaveral would not be an example of that because it's just low and flat. And
you're saying the vehicle assembly building is big, but it's not that big?
Yeah, not that big, right? Exactly. But yeah. So it's very much like an island or something. They just don't have that same kind of effect that you have when you get to the Gulf Coast, like up in the Appalachian Bay or in the Bay of Campeche or whatever, where you have real land that the air impacts with and changes speed over the land, and that can affect both to increase and to decrease the circulation intensity.
Yeah, not the same scale going on there. It made me think of the VAB, Brian. I think I told you about this before. I was covering the launch of the SpaceX Falcon Heavy, and the two boosters came in hypersonic, double sonic boom. Yeah. And it's kind of like the audio issues we've been working through today. The sonic booms hit the vehicle assembly building fractionally apart, and it sounded like a whammy bar on a guitar. It was like the strangest sound I've ever heard in real life.
Wow, I can imagine.
So there we go. We got Susan. Susan says live video is fun to watch. Love that. This is a comment coming in, which I wanted to point out. We'll be speaking with Jonathan Seri, I believe tomorrow, Fox News correspondent, about this. There it went. Wanted to get your thoughts here. August, end of this month being the 20th anniversary of Katrina. Still one of the costliest, one of the deadliest disasters in American history. Brian, going back and hearing some of those stories, you're going to hear more of them as we honor that anniversary on Fox Weather over the next few weeks. What do your immediate thoughts go back to?
Well, the question from Facebook is from Willie Dry. Willie, I assume it's the Willie Dry that I know, who is the author of this fantastic book, Storm of the Century, from about the great Florida Keys hurricane, Labor Day hurricane, 1935. And if you don't know that book, I mean, the story of the 35 hurricane is riveting. But about Katrina is New Orleans is vulnerable to a powerful hurricane today as it was in 2005. No, it is not. The flood wall system, which they call the risk reduction system, and they're very careful to call it a risk reduction system because just the wrong Category 2 hurricane can put water over that system and water into the interior, which, as we know, is a basin and so forth. But the difference is that the high expectation, boy, you just never want to say never, but the high expectation is that the system will stand. So even if you got this a tremendously powerful hurricane, stronger than Katrina and higher water, so the water is really pouring over the levees and the flood walls and into the basin. When that water goes down, assuming the hurricane doesn't park there like a Dorian or something, but you know, and it's moving, which normally storms up there move, although we obviously had Harvey, but that was much weaker and that wouldn't cause a problem. That wouldn't cause a storm surge problem. That would cause a fresh water problem, of course. But as soon as the water goes down below the lip, then the water's not coming in because the walls don't fail. So what happened in Katrina was the walls failed. So even when the water went back to its normal level, the water was still coming in to New Orleans and the lower ground there. So that would not be expected to happen. So it's just much, much better. And the pumping system within the city is much more robust than it was in 2005. So I'm not saying that a powerful hurricane wouldn't be a big disaster. It would. It wouldn't be the same kind of disaster, though, as Katrina. Because remember, if you think back to those horrible images you saw of people on their roofs after Katrina, there were shingles on those roofs. So they did not get strong winds. Those shingles were generally rated to 65, 70 mile an hour shingles. They weren't fancy shingles at all. So in the city, we didn't get strong winds. And if you put a windstorm in the city, then older buildings, more vulnerable buildings could very well still have a problem that did not have a problem in Katrina, not to mention all the trees and everything else that makes New Orleans so rich. So it's better. It's still a very hazardous place in a hurricane, and the likelihood is there is going to be another hurricane there one of these days. We focus on Katrina, and remember that the flood walls were built because of Betsy in '65 when the water poured into the lower Ninth Ward, just like it did in Katrina. And and then there was a huge storm in '47, and there was 1915, and going all the way back. New Orleans has been a vulnerable place for hurricanes since the beginning of New Orleans, and they built the French Quarter, the old city, because that was the high ground. And notice, even Katrina, even with the failed flood walls, the French Quarter did not flood because they were really smart where they put the city when they first built it way back in the day, hundreds of years ago. I'm not hearing you there, Ian.
Can you unmute?
Yeah,
there we go. Fair to say, though, that I'm thinking back. I've actually only been to New Orleans once in my life. It was 2 weeks before Katrina, back in 2005, and that left a mark on me. I ended up writing my thesis about the levee system and the failure there. So I learned a lot about that. Fair to say that it's as safe as it's ever been, because this was built as much more of a system, where the original levee system was kind of a hodgepodge, piecemeal. For the Army Corps of Engineers, $100 million a year, $200 million there. We do live in a bit of a reactionary society, and when that tragedy played out, Congress opened up billions to rebuild that system as just that.
Yeah, they spent over $14 billion just on that system. Well, and then that original flood wall and levee system that was built after Hurricane Betsy wasn't even finished by Katrina. There was
Right.
still gaps in it, and it was partially local levee boards, and the Army Corps was involved. As you said, a messy jurisdictional thing that a lot of good effort has gone in to try and be sure that some of those administrative issues don't, rear their head again. So yes, there's no question New Orleans is a much safer place than it was back then, but it's also sinking. And so there are parts of it, the physical parts that physical aspects of the overall city and area that are worse because the land is subsiding there as they pump more water and oil out of underneath of southern Louisiana, plus sea levels rising. So there are many issues, but the flood protection system or the flood risk reduction system is a fantastic system.
Bryan, we're going to mute me back out. We're going back to TikTok land.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I got a couple questions coming in from TikTok. The biggest one, though, is there's some people in the Carolinas, South Carolina, North Carolina, and they're concerned about the storms that they're having this weekend. They saw the system on the map, the X offshore. They're wondering what's the situation there. Do they need to be concerned and all of that?
Well, so the weather that they're having in South Carolina right now, here I brought it up. In fact, let me just change that. If you can punch up the map there, Jordan, is not this one they're talking about. It's not this one they might develop. It's really related to this front, and it's related to this flow coming in like this wedge flow coming in like that. If you look at the satellite, you can really see it here. Look, here's our little tropical system out here kind of trying to get itself together. But you can see right there, and look at the flow coming in here. So it's this cool air being overrun by tropical air coming up this way, and all that cloudiness and rain. The good thing is that as this low develops here and it heads on away, it's going to, if it intensifies as forecast, it's going to kind of pull in dry air and finally push this front out of here. It's going to, it should happen by this weekend. I think according to the forecast, if everything works out. So better weather is coming for the Carolinas, but then there's that more moisture coming from the south, and how far that gets, that may get up to South Carolina. I don't think that'll get to North Carolina though, but it is going to get to Florida and at least South Georgia.
All right, you got me back here. This question I love because it's something Bob Van Dillen and I were joking about yesterday, Bryan, about Colorado State issuing tropical outlooks. It would be like LSU doing lake effect snow. Dave is asking, thank you, Jordan. You've mentioned the European model several times. Why do the Europeans, who are not subject to hurricanes, have their own model? This is a global model that we're talking about.
Right. Well, first of all, let me just mention Colorado State. So, I knew Bill Gray, Dr. Bill Gray, back in the day for a number of years, and he was just an incredible human, and he left such a tremendous legacy. And I asked him, I was at his office a few times at CSU in Fort Collins. I said, "What are you doing here, Bill?" Because he spent a lot of time in Miami at the National Hurricane Center and as a hurricane researcher. That's where it occurred to him, as a matter of fact, the idea that El Nino, La Nina had an impact on hurricane seasons in the late 70s, early 80s. So, and his answer was that he was attracted there by the guy who started the tropical program at Colorado State University. And he just thought he was always attracted to the mountains. He liked to hike, but really it was because of the people that had accumulated at Colorado State. Okay, so now the European issue. The European Center is funded by European nations. So we in the United States have NOAA, of course, and there is a modeling department of NOAA that turns out the GFS and the various American models, including the specialty ones for just hurricanes. And they're in Britain, there is the UK Met Office, and they have their own model, and there's a Canadian model, and there's a German model, and there are other things. But this European Center one is kind of special because it's funded by multiple countries, and they turn out what's called a global model. It's not a specialty hurricane model, but the way they allocate their resources, first of all, they have huge supercomputers, more powerful supercomputers than we have and we're using. But the way they allocate them is a tremendous amount of the resources go into figuring out what is the starting point to run the model. So models run at what we call 0Z and 12Z. So subtract 4 hours for Eastern daylight time. So at midnight, so 8 p.m., noon, it would be 8 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time as an initialization time. So they put a lot of resources into figuring out what is the weather all over the world, three-dimensionally, at that time before they start running the model. If you take their initialization and you run the American model on it, you get better answers because that initialization is so strong. But if you notice, the European model comes out later in the day because they spend more time and more resources, computer resources, doing that. So it's just that their global model that forecasts the entire Earth happens to be a very, very good model, although their hurricane tracks were not that great last year. Generally, their weather pattern is the best, though. So hurricane tracks and the weather pattern don't always go exactly together. The GFS actually did quite well last year with hurricane tracks, although it's always the consensus, the average, and usually the smart average. They do some tricks in making the average. It's not just adding them up and dividing. They do some tricks and they end up with a corrected consensus model. That's what the National Hurricane Center uses to make their predictions, and that's what on average makes the best forecasts. The FSU Super Ensemble is one of those kinds of systems.
So, Bryan, I know the kind of crude adage about forecast models is crap in, crap out. If you don't have a good understanding of what's happening right now, you're not going to be able to project accurately what's happening in the future. Is that potentially part of the reason why the Europeans' AI model had some success to get things going? I know that that's a brand new thing, but it would make sense in the machine learning world too.
Yeah, so that's why the European, the thing called AIFS, the European AI forecast system, and the Google, the DeepMind system, both they wait around for that European initialization and then run their model on top of that. So yeah, that's the world class of initialization. Now there's a lot of work going on in the US to upgrade the system, the initialization system that we use as well. There are no mysteries here. It's not like the Europeans keep it a secret how they do it. But it's a matter of computer resources, and we do a lot with our supercomputers because we have to forecast for tornadoes and the special models that we use for rapid refresh and all this kind of thing. We do a lot of things. We turn out a lot of forecasts for use in the United States the Europeans don't have to do.
So
I lost you there, Ian. You got to unmute on that button. So thanks.
I got to hit it.
See you at 3:00.
We get the show coming up. You're going to take a few more questions, I think, and then we're going to do a whole kind of a tropics palooza right at the top of our show. You're going to take us through the analysis, what we're thinking, some of what we've talked about here, and get more of your thoughts. So this is a cool format, and I do like the interactive nature. So this is something that folks can expect to see a lot more of moving through this season.
All right. We'll see you. I'll see you at 3:00 over on Fox Weather, and Jordan and I will continue here just for a few minutes. Jordan, let's see who else we have. Have we heard from X, right? We heard from people on X. I'm curious about, just from the technology standpoint, where can we get questions? Well, I know we obviously Facebook, YouTube, and now we've seen X and TikTok. but the TikTok questions don't come on our screen. Who else have we seen any
Yeah,
questions from
so
anybody
we've got
else?
a couple. Yeah, we've heard from a couple people on X. We had John Keys earlier. This one he actually just came in about rapid intensification. So we
Yeah,
can
is their
talk about
ability
that
to
if you
forecast
want.
rapid intensification been a problem over the years? Do you feel the quality of that forecast has been getting better? Yes, it's been getting better. It's still a very difficult problem. Exactly what causes a system to rapidly intensify is not clear. We can identify a pattern that is probably conducive to the rapid intensification, but we don't know that just because the pattern, that's not enough because we see the pattern and it doesn't rapidly intensify. So there are internal processes, something to do with the hot towers, they're called, the tall thunderstorms that develop, and maybe something to do with the symmetry of them and how they're spaced around the eye that it triggers it or is a part of it. But what is sufficient and what is necessary to make it happen isn't clear. But the Hurricane Center has been uh, um increasingly forecasting it when the conditions appear right. And there is guidance that is developed mostly by Colorado State, by an organization called CIRA in Colorado State. And Mark DeMaria was very prominent in this scientist there in developing what's called the SHIPS model, which gives you a rapid intensification index that kind of gives you the odds based on factors that we know can um, be part or likely to be involved if a system rapidly intensifies. So you get these odds. And so if the odds are up, very often the Hurricane Center now goes ahead and calls for it.
All right, that's a great one. Yeah, we'd love to hear from our viewers on LinkedIn. So if we have anyone on LinkedIn and you're watching, we'd love to, if you could just put a comment where you're at or where you're watching from, we'd love to see it come in. We had one comment earlier, but if you're watching from there, we'd love to see it.
So
Another
we know
question we
that
have.
we know that the LinkedIn stream is working, right?
Yeah, as far as we know, if you are
Let me see. I
watching,
just
if you can't
signed
hear
into
us, if
my
there's audio,
LinkedIn
let us
page.
know.
Um, but I don't know if I can see it again. Let me see. Messaging. Hmm. I don't know. I can't see it on my LinkedIn page, but that doesn't mean anything because I might not be able to see it. Like I can't see it on my X account.
Oh, weird. Yeah, because we've been getting the X comments. While we're looking at that, I did have one question, a couple questions coming on TikTok and on Facebook too. People are wondering about the little blob of moisture moving over Florida, going into the Gulf. There's some
Right.
questions about that. What does that mean?
Well, yeah, the models were trying to develop a low pressure system there. The National Hurricane Center didn't bite on that. So here it is. If you can punch up the graphic there, Jordan, and this is what we're talking about here is this area of moisture that's causing the periods of heavy rain in South Florida today, and it's going to move across the state. So here we are this afternoon. Now watch as we go forward in time. And you see here we are Saturday, and look, this large area of moisture is here because we're getting this flow. Look at the flow in here. It's just bringing it in from the south, and that's going to continue to be an issue. So remember I said that the dry air, you see the browns moving into the Carolinas, but this extra surge of moisture is coming in. Now, you can kind of make out there is a general flow like this, general low pressure system here. And some of the models have indeed said, oh, this could turn into a tropical depression. I mean, I would put those odds at 10% or less, but it's not zero. But the thing is that that's not the issue. The issue is it's just another round of moisture. It's a very moist pattern in the south. And when you see a broad low like this, that often happens. Those things come along all the time. And before we, had access to all these models and all this information, we would have pretty much ignored it and just forecast rain, which is very likely to be the issue here.
That's a good one there. I did have one from YouTube, but I think you'll enjoy there. This one recommending, how would you recommend someone start out in trying to become a meteorologist?
Well, Chad, it really depends on how old you are. If you're in school and young, then I would suggest that you focus as much as you can on math and science. It's very, very hard. In fact, it's impossible to do kind of high-level meteorology if you don't know, if you don't have a real feeling for mathematics. So it really is about math and physics. That's what meteorology is. It's a branch of physics, and physics is based on math. So when I talk to students and say, what do you want to do? What are you taking in school? What are you good at? The ones that are not good in math generally don't succeed in being a meteorologist. Doesn't mean that they can't work in weather and do other things, but they generally can't get the meteorology degree, at least the high level degree. But again, there are broadcasting positions, there are other positions that you can do, but there's nothing that makes meteorology easier than being really good in math.
And just to show you really quick, Brandon, I've got LinkedIn, and there we go.
Wow. Okay.
So,
Fantastic.
so we are rocking and
So,
rolling there
so
on
at,
LinkedIn.
at that level, that means the technology is working. Okay. So, Jordan, unless you have, would you have one more question there? And then we need to wrap up because we have to, um, I have to get set up here for Ian's show at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, no, I mean most folks are talking about Hurricane Katrina. Obviously, a lot of discussion about that. There were some questions about 96L. I thought I'd share this comment very quick. There's a lot of comments about really impressed with what we have with Ian and you guys working together, talking about everything. But yeah, I think we're good to go. We can get ready for the air coming up at 3 o'clock on Fox Weather Now.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in and helping us out here with letting us know how the streaming is working. It looks like the streaming is working great. We're doing also, and it's a whole new layer of technology that allows us to do this and be interactive with you and take in all these feeds from different systems and then feed them all out and so forth. So we're going to continue to work on it, but we wanted to test this out. So you guys are kind of guinea pigs here for this hurricane season, so that as we move through the season, we have a way to communicate with you. And the great thing is that we can use this as part of Fox Weather. And by the way, I should tell you, like Jordan said, that I'll be on with Ian, as you know, at 3 p.m. on the Fox Weather stream. Which, if you think, wait a minute, I don't get Fox Weather, just go to foxweather.tv. And it'll tell you how to get it. You can get it on your phone or your computer or your iPad or your TV. And on your TV, you can get it on your Roku and your Apple streaming and any kind of streaming device, your Samsung TV, your LG TV, whatever, your smart TV. So it'll tell you exactly how to do that. And you download an app and it's free. There's no money. You don't have to sign up for anything. It's all free. So, we're working there 24 hours a day. And here we do this when things are going on. And we're planning to do this when there is any kind of a threat on a regular basis to be sure that we're answering any questions and understanding what the concerns are by you guys there in the audience. So, all right, thanks very much for today, and we'll be back in touch, and we'll see what the next go round is, and we'll see what next week brings us. Nothing here through the weekend to be concerned about, and then we'll see by the beginning of next week, maybe we'll start to have some idea what the end of next week and the following week will bring. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.